Y'all rationing around here? Come on, give me the goddamn string beans.
Food was in short supply during the Civil War, so people often had to be creative. Here are 10 unconventional foods that people enjoyed during the Civil War. Rice and molasses.
White rice, brown rice. Those are just some of the rices I love.
Molasses, the sweetener that is extracted from various types of sugar cane, is a thick syrup that is black in color. The syrup is made by first fermenting sugarcane juice and then cooking it down to produce a dark brown liquid. After the juice is cooked, it is ground and then treated with an enzyme to start the process of breaking down the sugar into its constituent parts. The resulting liquid is then filtered to remove any particles, and the thick syrup is ready for use. It's probably fair to say that rice and molasses was a dish often found on a family's table during the length of the Civil War conflict. The humble sweetener was being used as a staple in both savory and sweet preparations. Molasses has been dubbed the new sugar by some. In fact, you'll often find that a tablespoon of molasses contains more calcium than a serving of dairy, and the sweetener is also a good source of iron and fiber. Rice and molasses can both be used in many other dishes, with the sweetener often playing a secondary role to the other ingredients. When rice and molasses are combined, the molasses adds a complex, nutty flavor to the rice.
I'm a yoga nut, and I'm a nut.
The classic combination was a staple food during the times of the Civil War, but brown rice and molasses is also a delicious option. Slosh.
What is that?
Pancake.
Bacon, oil, and flour were used to make slosh, or Civil War soldiers made slosh by frying bacon in tons of fat and then adding in watered-down flour that was as thick as milk to the leftover bacon grease. The concoction, sometimes known as kush, may have included meat or just been composed of the grease after the meat was fried. Alternatively, crumbled cornbread might be added to the stew to give it some extra flavor and texture. Slosh could be cooked until all of the liquid has evaporated, providing it with a thicker texture. Slapjack was a kind of slosh that used less water, resulting in a flour paste that was blended with fat and cooked on one side. After that, the pancake-looking result, also known as a slapjack, was turned and cooked thoroughly. You ate something called sloosh in the Southern Army. You were given cornmeal and bacon, which you cooked, leaving a large amount of fat in the pan. The cornmeal was then spun around in the oil to produce the dough, which was then formed into a snake and wrapped around the ramrod of your musket before being cooked over the campfire. This was a quick and easy method of cooking a fulfilling and hearty meal with little to no ingredients. Horses, mules, and even rats.
They feed us horse meat with traces of jockey meat.
Food scarcity was not much of a concern for the northern armies. The Union possessed a well-developed transportation network that could provide whatever their forces required throughout the conflict. There were times when Union forces did not get supplies for various reasons, but in general, Union troops did not face food shortages. The Confederacy, on the other hand, was the polar opposite. During the war, the South had constant food shortages, which further worsened as the conflict progressed. In the South, it was the most influential people who received food supplies first during the Civil War. Politicians and other officials were the first to eat, followed by troops, citizens, slaves, and eventually captured Union soldiers held in different Civil War prison camps around the South. Despite the fact that receiving food was a top priority for Confederate soldiers, they frequently went hungry. Because of the poor state of the Confederate railroad network and general inadequate transportation infrastructure, any food produced had a difficult time reaching the troops or anybody else. The Union blockade of southern seaports also handicapped the Confederacy's abilities to get foods and other essential supplies. When things were tough, troops would occasionally eat their horses and mules. Rats were even eaten in times of acute need.
Not a rat. No rat.
As the war progressed, food shortages in the Confederacy grew so severe that food riots erupted in several southern cities. Hardtack.
It's a cracker.
The Royal Navy was one of the first to mass-produce hardtack in large quantities. Production dates back to the 1660s. Along with their substantial 1 gallon of beer ration, English sailors were given up to a pound of biscuits each day. Hardtack, made from salt, water, and wheat flour, provided a large amount of nutritional content, could sustain a crew at sea or an army in the field for weeks, if not months.
Whoa, Mama, there's a kick like a mule!
Drawing out every last trace of moisture is the key to making the biscuits survive so long and prevent them from going rancid. To accomplish this, hardtack slabs were cooked and rebaked up to 4 times. If kept dry, the biscuits would last eternally when stored. The hardtack would last so long, American Civil War troops were issued hardtack made during the Mexican-American War, which had taken place 15 years earlier. Hardtack really was an important part of the Civil War soldiers' diet. It was simple to make, full of nutrition, and easy to transport, but it did lack flavor and a nice texture. When it comes to the name, hardtack really was as solid as the name suggested. The cracker-like food was approximately 3 by 3 inches in size and about ½ an inch thick. Soldiers were commonly rationed a pound of hardtack every day. Mold and bug infestations were common in hardtack, especially when it wasn't properly preserved. This proved to be quite the problem if it was eaten after dark, as many soldiers couldn't tell the difference between bug-infested hardtack and their normal rations. Although maybe it wasn't all bad, the bugs probably added a little extra protein to their already malnourished bodies. As we keep moving on, take a second to hit that like button, would ya?
Thank you. Next!
Commissary Brazilian stew.
Now, Chris, this is Brazil.
The Civil War era was full of conflict on the battlefield and on the dinner table. The war forced Americans to make do with less, and that often meant foregoing familiar foods in favor of cheap, locally sourced ingredients. The result was a turning point in American cuisine, and one of the first times that modern cooking techniques, from deep frying to braising, were used to transform humble ingredients into dishes that would stand the test of time. On the battlefield, the methods of cooking weren't at all like that of a normal kitchen. The unwholesome and sometimes dangerous ways of cooking inside volunteer battalions concerned more than a few members of the U.S. Sanitary Commission, commonly known as the Sanitary. They started experimenting with various cooking methods, coming up with new ways of using cooking equipment. They would also encourage chefs to keep fat, sugar, and salt to a minimum and to avoid overcooking beans. There were over 18 soups, stews, meat, and vegetable dishes created during this time, including a dish known as Commissary Brazilian stew. Cubed beef was coated in vinegar and cooked with onions. The combination simmered for many hours over low heat, and potatoes were occasionally added for a heartier supper.
That's just perfect.
For a wartime meal, Commissary Brazilian stew actually sounds pretty appetizing, much more so than the likes of hardtack and other Civil War dishes. Water cakes and ash cakes.
Cake represents joy. No one's ever heard of a wedding pie.
As you can imagine, eating during the Civil War may have been a difficult undertaking, especially for the typical American Civil War Southern soldier. The Union naval blockade had taken its toll on goods smuggled in from other countries by 1862. Constant pressure along the Mississippi River in the west and the Shenandoah Valley in the east made it difficult to maintain a consistent food supply. When it came to food, Southern soldiers were nothing if not resourceful, as shown by their invention of Slosh. This is where the hoe cake comes in. The hoe cake was made of cornmeal, water, and salt, but was not quite a normal pastry by today's standards. The resultant batter was then cooked in animal fat, resulting in a firm but flaky pancake. Water cakes, similar to their hoe cake counterpart, were easy to make, with a thick batter made from 2 softly beaten eggs, salt, cold water, and flour. The batter was cooked and butter was used to enhance it. An ash cake was an eggless cake option similar to both the water cake and hoe cake. Cornmeal and hot water were used to make ash cakes. The mixture was molded into flat cakes covered in corn shucks and cooked over hot ashes after adding salt. Salt pork or salt beef?
Oh, this is so good. Oh, that's the way I like it. Salty.
When it came to food during the Civil War, it was always a struggle to keep things fresh and prevent them from spreading bacteria. The most difficult issue was preserving meat. Soldiers and civilians alike relied on salted beef and pork. The situation in the hog-raising South swiftly deteriorated. The lack of quality salt was becoming an issue, and a lot of the meat rations were going bad as a result. The difficulty was exacerbated by speculation and shipment issues. A 200-pound bag of salt cost 50 cents in New Orleans at the start of the war. The cost had risen to $25 by 1862.
It's too much! It's too much!
During this period, salt beef was a normal ration that could be switched out for salt pork. Both types of meat had a wide variety of applications. They both could be boiled, served raw, sandwiched between hardtack, or stewed with beans. According to many, salt pork and salt beef were an invaluable option during the war, and a much better option to the stringy and tougher salt horse that was also eaten during the times. Cornmeal.
His favorite food is corn.
Corn has always been a staple food for humans. Cornmeal is a grain product made by grinding dried corn. Today, most cornmeal is made from yellow dent corn, which is a variety that's considered sweet, meaning it has a high sugar content.
I have both type 1 and 2 diabetes.
Ow!
Cornmeal can be used to make a variety of foods, including cornbread, biscuits, and polenta. Cornmeal was another common dietary item among Confederate soldiers. Cornbread was a favorite Southern delicacy, but troops sometimes lacked the necessary materials to produce true cornbread from their cornmeal. Cornmeal, on the other hand, was still used to make other dishes and was occasionally cooked without milk or eggs to make a simple type of cornbread for soldiers to consume on the battlefield. Foraged foods.
Spinach?
Mushroom.
Foraging for wild foods is an ancient practice that has recently been making a comeback. From finding locally grown fruits and veggies to searching for mushrooms, bugs, and other edibles, foraging is a great way to get your daily dose of the nutrients your body needs. While not for everyone, foraging can be an excellent addition to your survival arsenal. That being said, before you set out into the great outdoors to find those coveted ramps or chanterelles, it's important to learn the basics of foraging, as well as being able to identify common poisonous plants. Even though today most people forage for fun or as a hobby, things were much different back in the wartime days. While Civil War soldiers took a variety of meals with them, the truth is that much of what they ate was foraged from the area they were occupying at the time. Soldiers would frequently gather food from adjacent farms, either amicably if the farm owner was kind, or more often by force if they were not.
Whoa. Don't tell me you're thinking about eating the forbidden fruit.
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
If time allowed, soldiers would also go hunting for wildlife. Hunting and harvesting food from nearby farms, on the other hand, were not a particularly dependable means to feed an army. Instead of relying on these sources for the majority of their food, most trips used hunting and foraging as a way to obtain extra rations or get access to goods that would have not been available otherwise. Canned goods.
Look at this can of tuna. Yeah, Starkiss, Jerry. Most tuna don't make their cut.
When we think about disaster preparedness, we often think about stockpiling food and water. That's important, but there are other items that you should have on hand in case of emergencies. Canned goods are a great way to add nutritious food to your stockpile without a lot of extra effort. They're easy to store and provide a variety of nutrients. During times of war, families often find themselves with little money. Canned goods are one of the best ways to save money during these times. Canned goods are a great way to provide your family with nutritious food that is prepared and ready to go, which can help save time and money.
I can save all of us. We can save money.
Canned goods were also an essential on the battlefield, as they were easy to travel with and could keep for much longer than traditional fresh food options available to the average soldier. Because canned food rations were pre-made meals that could be consumed warm or cold, they quickly became a mainstay to the war-weary men and effectively let battalions of soldiers eat when there weren't many other options available.
Not bad. Not bad.
Get a taste of more great videos. Just tap or click, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell to join our notification squad. And hey, leave us a comment.